Tonight, as voted by you, our loyal listeners, the best of 2020 on the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. These agents are the best of the best, the top real estate agents in the country, selling from over 100 million a year to hundreds of millions a year. They are breaking records year after year in the industry at large and in luxury real estate. Michael Carucci in Boston, Mayi de Vega in Miami and South Florida, Michael Dreyfus in Silicon Valley, Nikki Field in Manhattan and New York City, Daniel Heider in Washington, D.C., and Jonathan Spears on 30A in the Florida Panhandle, from Panama City to Destin, all sharing how to give the best service for multi-million-dollar clients. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. Michael Carucci in Boston.
So tell me, before we go back into your career, because I think there are a lot of agents, we get a lot of agents listening to the show that are just, I want to take my business to the next level, and in a way of being a professional, not a way, and most of our agents are in the luxury, but the other agents I think are like, okay, I'm at a level where I could go into ownership, I could go into running a big team, starting my own thing. So for those that, which are many of us listening, what are the pros and cons of managing agents and running a big company and being an agent, doing big deals and making big money? I kind of threw the big money in that, but anyway.
You have so much more control of the process, and your quality of life, in my opinion, improves dramatically as well. I think there are some people, like the owner brokers of my office, we've got maybe 400 agents, and they're great at what they do. They're patient. I'm not patient. They do a lot of hand holding. It was frustrating to me where you would, you'd have an agent with you for years, and all of a sudden they'll go out and they'll do a decent deal and then come to you and say, hey, want to raise?
Yeah.
And you see it all the time. So
yeah,
I like the aspects of the business where there's a transaction involved and not a personality involved, and managing the transaction with, whether it's the buy side or whether it's the sell side. I'm more suited to that, and especially at the level that we transact business usually with the 10% of the 1%. And remember that when you're dealing with that caliber, when they're that successful, they're probably smarter than you are. And so listen more, listen to what their needs are, deliver value, deliver service. And, there's a couple of components. One, you hope that they like you, you hope that they respect you, you hope that they know you. And then if you can just show to them that you're knowledgeable, there's no reason for them to look somewhere else.
I think the key is there's a common, I'd say this too much, but it's true. There's a common belief or paradigm in our business in general that it's about, follow up. Not that that's not true, but the more important thing that really I find is a common denominator of agents is the value, is especially when you get into luxury real estate, upper tier, the top 1% or the top 10% of the top 1% is they're looking for someone that they can trust. Like you said, someone that can hear them and they'll listen to them, and someone that knows what nobody else does. And someone who's the resource and access to them.
Somebody not to do something, and it's not in your best interest. When someone is looking at something and you have a huge fee and you say, don't do this, and this is why I don't think you should do this. You've got a customer for life, because they're looking at you saying, wait, this is a lifetime relationship. This is not transaction based.
Exactly.
I've got a client now, I can't mention their name, but they just sold one of their companies for a little under $3 billion. And they earmarked $100 million just to spend in very high-end luxury real estate for me to go out and farm it. And we've located a handful of transactions in the last couple of months. But there were a couple that were looking at, they were ready to go, ready to sign the contracts. And I'm saying, I wouldn't do this, guys. And this is why. What are the, when you do that, your credibility just enhanced itself like 10x.
Mm-hmm. Well, that, and when you know the business well enough, I think a lot of it is knowing when to do that, because if you make the call and it's wrong, either way it's costly.
Yeah. Well, I think a really good agents need to understand when to push, when to pull, and when to do nothing at all. And it's all timing related.
Know when to push, when to pull, and when to do nothing at all.
And just don't do anything. Just wait it out, because you just don't know.
Yeah, really, really good advice. So we talked about, before we started recording, we talked about, it's funny because in the beginning of our conversation, when we weren't recording, you said, I really focus on the client, not a geographical area, but you also said it's very important to niche or niche and know what your niche is. And obviously you have one. Elaborate on that a little bit for our listeners and what you mean by that, and what it is for you, and how you figured out what your value is versus what somebody else's is, and maybe some examples in your career of other agents.
Where I'm a little bit different. You've heard the adage, real estate is local. And I think that is true to a certain extent, but technology has changed the availability of information,
Mm-hmm.
whether, and it's in front of you. And I'll give you an example. Last year I sold the most expensive home in Cambridge, not in Boston. I sold the third most expensive home in Lexington, the third most expensive home in Winchester. These are suburbs of Boston. Now, are there agents in Lexington and Winchester that technically know the town better than I do? Perhaps. But it's so easy to gather sales data, figures, neighborhoods, so you can effectively be a quick study and become an expert in those towns.
Mm-hmm.
We follow where our clients want us. Right now, I have a handful of multimillion-dollar homes in Boston. I've got one of the most expensive estates an hour north of Boston on the ocean. I have an estate in Martha's Vineyard. So why do they hire us versus somebody geographically local to them? I think because sellers have realized that the buyers of these properties are probably not currently living there. They're probably relocating. And usually when somebody's relocating, they come into the hub. So we get them technically first, and then what we do with them. And it's true. I can tell you that of the transactions I just mentioned, I think 3 of them I did direct, where we sourced the buyer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you would say, so to sum it up, what would you say, what is your niche? What do you specialize in? We already know the answer, but.
Ultra high net worth clientele, whether it's the list side or the buy side, where they're coming, and they're not first time buyers. I've got mortgage brokers that constantly complain to me, how come I'm not sending them any business? And I'm not sending them any business because there's very few mortgages involved in what I do.
Exactly.
And these people have existing banking relationships.
Exactly. Really great point. So here's a good question. Everybody, it seems to be kind of a common theme that everybody wants, or maybe not everybody, but it's popular for agents to want to be that luxury agent, or want to be the agent representing the high net worth or ultra high net worth buyer, but not everybody does it. And I will say, before I let you answer the question, I know a lot of people who know a lot of people, but those aren't always the people who end up being successful at representing the high net worth client or successful as real estate agents. So I do this a lot. I'm combining 2 questions is, how did you hone in your specialty? And what is your advice to someone on whether they should consider even tapping into representing a high net worth client or not? What are the pros and cons? That's a loaded question, but start where you want.
Well, first is somebody has to do it. Somebody has to represent them. And why not you? So you've got to go in with that attitude. Somebody has to do this. Why not me? And then you need to understand how highly successful, educated people think and work. And they've got to like you. They've got to trust you. You cannot bullshit them. And you've got to become an authority.
Okay, say that again, would you?
You cannot bullshit them.
You cannot bullshit the high net worth client, especially the ultra high net worth client.
Yeah.
You just can't. I mean, that is like so important.
Stupid.
What's that?
They didn't get to where they are by being stupid.
Exactly. But keep going. You were on a path, but I had to get that out again.
I think I'll give you an analogy. I told you last year I was the number one Sotheby's agent in New England, $130 million, but maybe 40 transactions.
And top 25. So 130 million, 40 transactions, and the top 25 of Sotheby's International Realty.
The point is, the gentleman behind me, a great broker, did like $80 million, 300 transactions. Now, whose business is
difference between 1 and 2, by the way? Big difference.
Right, but 300 transactions versus 40 transactions. Now, 300 inspections. That's 300 to 600 attorneys, 300 closings. If he does his job well, now he has 300 clients that are going to refer him business. Some would say that his business is more valuable than my business. Last year I transacted, round numbers say it's 40. But though, remember, that's a much smaller circle. That type of wealth is controlled. There's more likelihood that those people know each other than the 300 people know each other. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Then what happens is your business starts snowballing. And, St. Regis, we're bringing that to Boston. That didn't just happen. The St. Regis people looked at what we were doing for the Four Seasons.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Everybody does, I know that, but our listeners don't. So you brought the Four Seasons to Boston.
Well, Cronin Development is a great developer, is building what is going to be the first St. Regis residence without a hotel component. It's 114 units.
And that's what you're bringing to Boston and the St. Regis in the next 2 years.
Right. And this is interesting because this is really where new development's going. And I'll give you 2 examples. What Cronin is doing is he has a 2-member on-site development sales team, and they're 2 of the best in the business. And they hired Gibson Sotheby's, myself, to be the outside branding firm. So the developer has his own sales office that controls the sales. We're the outside brokerage that brings the business in. And that's where you're going to see a lot of development being done that way. And to give you an example, we just finished One Dalton, which is the second Four Seasons in Boston. They listed a company, Campion & Company, Tracy Campion, number 4 agent in the country last year, but phenomenal agent. But again, the model is the same, where Campion & Company was the official listing agent, and the Four Seasons had their own in-house sales office. So what they're doing is the developers are controlling the sales process and using branded real estate companies to sort of funnel the traffic in. And that's what you see happening.
Mayi de la Vega in Miami and South Florida.
So can you give us, whether it's your own, or I'd love to hear about, because you've seen so many agents and helped them grow their business. What are some examples of, well, how about this? What is the common denominator of successful agents?
I think that they have to have several great skills to be a great agent. They got to want it, first of all, and they have to be willing to work hard. And a lot of people come into the business thinking that they're going to do this part-time, or they're going to help this one person sell a house, and then but this is a job that requires tremendous amount of dedication, tremendous amount of focus, tremendous amount of research, market knowledge, people skills, organizational skills. And you need to be able to really connect with people and build a sphere and have a game plan. You know, you've got to take it as a serious job. And so these agents that are out there thinking that I'm going to just do this part-time and I'm going to dibble dabble and come in and out of it. No, you've got to elevate your business. You've got to be part of, you know, every tool that's out there. You've got to make a commitment to try to learn it. One of our biggest struggles with our agents, and we have a lot of them, is we put out so many tools, and I guarantee you that a lot of them don't even know half the tools that we have there. And and the ones that succeed are the ones that really take the time to take it seriously and make the time to educate themselves and elevate themselves. And they're not the norm. So when you sit in front of a seller, he can feel that energy. He knows. And I remember one time I had Mike Ferry come speak to us many, many years ago, maybe like 8 years ago. And he said, you know, a guy flies around in his private plane. He's been so successful. And he says, no matter who I get in front of, I read that script 100 times before I go out there. It takes practice. It takes dedication. It takes, you know, and then personality. You know, some people have the ability to connect easily with others. And this is the single most, for many people, this is the single most important asset that they have. Yeah. You are their trusted advisor. They need to feel that you are solid, that you know what you're doing, that you're going to give them advice on what they should price their home, or if they're buying, what they should be buying at. And to have that, you need market knowledge, you need discipline, you need to know what's going on. And that you can't just pick up one day. And, you know, there's people that do really well when they're farming neighborhoods because they live there. They know who's lived in that house and has a history for so many years of what's happened in that neighborhood. Yeah. So it's a lot of different skills together. It's not as easy as people think, I think.
No. Well, I wrote them all down, so I'm going to repeat them for everybody. But I'm like, what's the one common denominator? And you said there were lots of them. But I think that's important because it answers the question of why do like 5% or less of people who get into this business last? Oh, are you okay?
No, I'm good, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, but what you said was, number one, desire. Number two, a work ethic and the will to work hard, which are the same thing. Number three, dedication and sheer commitment. Number four, you've got to know your market and learn it and continue to learn it and learn and never quit learning. Number five, I can't read my writing. Sorry, everybody. Seriously.
Be good at your technology.
Organizational. You've got to be organizational. And be good. Yeah. The learning is the technology as well. Just learn whatever it is in your market. That was number four. Number five is be organized. You've got to be organized. You've got to be able to implement. You've got to be able to execute like a CEO. Number six, be able to connect with other people. Connect, feel, you know, or recognize and own whatever level that is that you have. Number seven is you've got to have a sphere. And if you don't have one, build it and be willing to build it and pay attention to it. And number eight, have a business plan and be willing to plan. You've got to plan. You've got to look at your business. You've got to adjust. You've got to be flexible and combine all of those 8 things.
And one last one, very important.
Number
9 should be number 1. Just be really
passionate. Save the best for last. Now go ahead, be
passionate about what you're doing. You got to love what you do every day. You got to wake up. You got to wake up with a smile. You got to write your list of gratitude for that day, what I'm grateful for, and blessed, and feel blessed that you are in a great business, and that if you work hard, there's no limit to the amount of money you can make, and also how many people's lives you can change. Somebody said one day that my calling really wasn't about like the money or anything like that, but it was because I really feel many times that I'm in an industry that I can help shape people's lives. How many people do we know or do as agents that we encounter that are going through a divorce or have lost their job or that, and so you're acting as their counsel, you're helping, you're supporting them, you're embracing them, you're there for them. And this is a really important part of what we do every day. And that you can't ever, I love technology and we're a super techie company, and I, love technology. And that's the future, and that's where we're headed, and that's where we're at, and it's going to even be more. And all of this that we're currently going through is going to change the way we all interact with each other.
It's going to strengthen it, really. Yeah.
It's going to strengthen it. So all of that is really, really very important.
But the technology that we have, which I will attest, we have, everybody probably knows listening, I'm with Sotheby's. We have some of the best technology. And it's being someone interviewing, I think we're going to be 163, I believe. Sorry if I'm off, everybody. 160, maybe 164 interviews of agents around the country in different companies. The technology is top notch because we can go out to the industry and pick the best of everything, and we put it in. We're the best agents picking the best industry. And everybody that's not at Sotheby's, this isn't a Sotheby's pitch. This is just an experience in our industry. Wherever you are, we have the ability to do that in the time and age that we're in. And I think it's a little bit different. What's best for one agent can be different for another.
Exactly.
Being able to pull together and pull those things together. But you back to the gratitude, having passion for what you do, and realizing it really just resonated with me is when you're involved in people's lives, you have the opportunity to change their life and to make them better. And I think sometimes our industry could be perceived as so transactional that we forget the value and the opportunity of the value that we can have and instill in other people's lives. There's a lot more there than we often appreciate, realize, or harness.
Absolutely. And in the Larry Kendall Ninja Training course, you learn that, and they talk a lot about that. The importance when you have a database, it's more important to connect with a client on a relationship basis and asking them about their hobbies, about their families, about where they are in their lives when you make that call. You don't want to ask them, oh, do you want to sell your house? Or I've got this great client for you.
Exactly.
That really builds, and building those relationships, they've proven over time and time again that all those email blasts that agents are sending continuously, they don't work.
Yeah.
Versus picking up the phone and saying, how are you? How's the family? What's going on in your life? That's so important. So important.
Exactly.
To continue to practice. They may be old fashioned, but it still works. And even if you're a millennial, listen, I have a bunch of millennials that work in my graphic design, and they're so cool, and and one girl in particular, she's, in her 20s, I found out that she was going through a personal medical situation. And I picked up the phone and I called her. I could have texted her. I could have just sent her a text, with little balloons and get well soon, whatever. And I said, no. I picked up the phone. I called her. Well, you know what? Today, I could read you her text. She wrote to me back. She texted me back, and she said to me, all my tests came back negative, but I can't thank you enough for picking up the phone and calling me.
Even though she texts you back. I love it. But
still. But she thanked me for calling her. And then I followed up. I knew what day she was going to the doctor. I called her and I said, how did it go? What were the results? And, she didn't forget that. She did not. She did text me back, but she didn't forget that. And so even with the millennials, you're thinking that all they care is that texting. Everybody needs the human love. Everybody.
Even
needs
the
love.
millennials. Yeah, I love it.
You need love. You need that hug. You need that. Yeah. Now we're sending virtual hugs to everybody.
Michael Dreyfus in Silicon Valley.
So tell us a little bit about your because I wanted to transition this into pitching and where you are now, because your business has very much changed from being hyper-focused and doing a lot of management and overextending yourself, and learning that I feel like it's the lesson especially as realtors, we're givers. You're just giving of yourself. So at what point, how do you decide the boundaries to draw and what how do you decide, how do you mold yourself into the right place to be the most of yourself without overextending yourself?
Well, one thing is I'm a real sharer, and and it's not because I'm nice. It's because I believe that I get it back in spades. Okay, in my experience, even standing up with a bunch of new agents and giving them my listing presentation, if you want to say that, this is my listing presentation, and this is how I do it. I learn as much from them and their comments and what they say as what I give, and it's always evolving anyways. I mean, I kind of laugh because sometimes they say, "Can you give me your listing presentation? Like hand it to me?" No, I can't hand you anything. I mean, as a matter of fact, I bring stuff in and I put it down on the table, and lots of times I walk out with it and no one opened it. You know, it's a conversation, and it's always evolving and things are changing, and really the analysis is what's such a big part of it. So I like sharing for that reason, and that's my style in deal making. I mean, I told this agent last night, we were laughing after we did that big deal. It was her first big deal. I mean, she had it's the first one she had done, and we had furniture involved, and I told her early on, I don't really know you yet, but I hate furniture. And sure enough, furniture almost ruined our deal. And we were talking at the end, and she kind of thanked me for how open I was with her, but I told her that's just my style. I mean, I like transparency. It's called a deal. It's not called my way, right? It's called a deal. And so you got it. I find that when you give and take and talk, and obviously we have barriers and points where you step back. But as much as you can do from that, you're trying to put something together. You're not trying to rip everything apart. And that's done me well. And it's done me well with my clients too. I think it's a little longer term strategy in terms of building your business. It's, I think short term is what can I get today and what deal can I make today? But longer term, you get a reputation, and then people trust you, and that's good with agents and clients.
It's amazing how that builds when you're young and you're new. I remember thinking, well, this is just what you're supposed to do. And over again, it's like the compound effect of people remembering when you don't even remember how things went down and wanting to work with you again, which grows your business. I love what you said though. You're putting things together, not ripping them apart. So pitch anything in your pitches and your listings. You went from hyper focus to you're a lot broader now. You're selling higher and higher price points. You have a listing, for example, in Montecito. So tell us a little bit about where your business went, where it is now, and where you see our business in general going, being the business of being a residential real estate broker or agent.
Well, I think as Pitch Anything sort of demonstrates, there's a skill set here. And that book talks about the skill of presenting, right?
Tell us a little bit about that too, to put into context for everybody.
Well, Pitch Anything, it's a fun book. I mean, it's this guy's concept of how to win business, okay? And very simple things. I like reading this kind of stuff. I don't buy into all of it, but you always take pieces away and then you put it into your own self. And one of the things two things I liked about it was, one, the power framing that Jere referred to is this idea that people are scared when you first get there. He called it the croc brain. Is that right, Jere?
Yeah.
I think it's the croc brain.
The
croc brain, they're sitting there and they're going, oh my God, what if this is the wrong person? They're going to make me sign something. I don't want to sign anything. I'm so scared right now. I don't know what I'm doing.
Just get me out of here.
Yeah. And you have to get through that. And one of the ways you get through that is with the power frame, with becoming an authority and telling them, making them feel like I'm talking to the right person. Okay. And sometimes you have to fight to get that, because some people will try to take it away from you. They'll say, you know what, you really don't sell many houses here. Okay. And actually the other story is that I realized when I read Pitch Perfect the week before, I had gone to an area where I'd never sold a house ever. They called me because it was a high price point, and they said, we want to talk to you. And I grabbed a local agent of ours that was there. We went over there. We walked in the house, this beautiful house, like totally, it was actually done. The architect modeled after monarch butterfly with views of the ocean in Pescadero, California.
Wow.
Yeah. And I walked in and we walked around the house, and I said, okay, let's go sit down over there. right, Jerry? He says in there, always pick where you're going to go. I said, let's go sit down over there. And I think I'm interested in taking this listing. Okay. And then we spent an hour with him telling me why I should take the listing pretty much. And I didn't realize it, but I totally power framed him because I read the book later. And I meant it though, because again, it's a deal, right? I got to be right for the property. He's got to be right for the property. I don't do that normally. I don't know why in the heck I did it in that situation, but I did.
You got to get intuition.
That's what Pitch
Well,
Perfect
how many
talks
times
about.
do you go to an appointment and I think, it's funny because it was authenticity, transparency, because truly there becomes a point in your career where you go to listings and you think, I don't need to take this listing. I actually think that. And I make the mistake of just not returning the phone call, which I hate to admit that out loud because this is getting recorded, but it's a thing agents do. Whereas the reality is we go into listings going, do I want this or not? Especially when you get to a certain level of experience and inventory, you've got to take the ones you're going to do a good job for and that are going to sell.
Yeah.
And the sellers are going to.
And that's an ego thing too. Sometimes you get competitive and you want to win it, when you shouldn't. You just really shouldn't. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So we were going from there into where your business is now, pitching now. You've gone from hyper-focused to now you're taking listings in Montecito. Our industry's changing. High net worth clients are changing the way they hire, what they need, what we're realizing they need, what we're able to offer them, what you're able to offer them.
Well, the big change for me was moving up the price point and realizing, one, how small that community is. Like you hear the phrases that, they're all in the same pond. It's sort of true. I mean, we were talking earlier about, numbers. The numbers of billionaires in the world was 2,347, is changing all the time.
Wait, say that again, though. I think everybody needs, how many billionaires are there in the world?
2,347 was the last time I looked.
Many.
Not very many. And by the way, if you're selling a house, I think it's $800,000 is the top 3% of income in the United States. Okay.
Wow.
So it really, if you start to adjust yourself to where, what your market, whatever your market is, and mine happens to be super wealthy, right? And even for Golden Gate Sotheby's, when I go and give the listing presentation and I talk about it, a lot of the agents in other places will say, well, Mike, you saw all those fancy houses, all those people. I'm like, no, you're selling $1 million houses. Do you understand the income that's required to buy $1 million house? I mean, that's wealth. Okay. That's top 3% of income in the United States. And, and so once I started, I kind of knew that as you start moving up the price point, you're realizing you're talking to a limited audience that has big buying potential. Okay. And they're interested in not just what's going on here, they're interested in what's going on in New York, or their place in Tahoe or Paris or Rome or whatever. And I think Sotheby's was a great move for me for that reason, because it really gave me a lot of outlets to collect information like that and be in the know. But more importantly, and this is going on in spades right now in COVID, I'm helping my clients buy things everywhere. So I think the referral thing, and it's not a referral, it's like you're involved in these deals. They trust you and they want to take you with them, but you need help. And that started me flipping that on its head to listings. Hey, I got this skill set in this price point. And the people are coming from, kind of all the same places. They all know each other. And the Montecito example is a perfect one. We told that client, we know that people from Silicon Valley are buying a lot in Montecito. And the agent goes, yeah, there was this deal. And I said, they're my clients and I'm going to put your house in front of them. And that concept of knowing how to play in that space, how to market in that space, and that your clients are crossing things and going back and forth, just was a revelation to me. And now I'm running with it. I'm starting to think, how can I take this skill set and use it? And it's sort of a service to my existing clients. I send them out stuff like, hey, there's this really nice place in Vail. You interested? And they often are.
Good. Well, and then, or they have a place in Vail and you have a broker in Vail who you know very well.
Right.
Right.
Nikki Field in Manhattan in New York City.
Specialize and build a team. On specializing, I'm like, don't you go. I'm kidding. So in specializing, I loved one thing you said, or let's review that. And then I'm going to ask on this team. On specializing, you talked about labels. I've never heard anybody call it that. And then you had not only clients coming to you, but the press coming to you, which everybody else is figuring out how to chase them down. You just did your job and attracted them. And then you talked about an ad that got 11 press requests. Tell us a little bit about that ad and what it looked like and how that transpired.
This was a very significant sale, 54 million in Manhattan, and it was in a challenging building that hadn't been doing that well. It was the largest resale in the history of the building, and we had the buyer as well as the seller. So I just heralded it. I called it, largest resale, highest resale in the history of, well, actually it was the highest resale that this past year in Manhattan, and specifically in that building. And it's a building that people have been quite curious about, high profile. The press was very interested in how we were able to take a building that had been languishing and have such a very extremely strong result from it. Once a client reads that you have this capability, this specialization, this experience, and this knowledge, they really feel a little bit stronger testimony and endorsement than just hearing from a friend, you should use my broker.
Exactly. So how did you do that?
The sale?
Yes.
That was directly responsible to my desk, my international desk. Again, specialization led me to opening up numerous international desks starting in 2008. And the story behind that, Jere, is 2008, the New York market fell apart due to the mortgage-based.
The Great Recession.
Yeah. I looked around.
You could forget.
At that point, I had 12 brokers to feed, and there was no local business. And I certainly was not going to let any of them suffer or my business die in the vine. So I got on the road and started flying around the world, following the money. Where were people buying? Where were people interested in investing, specifically in New York? And it was on sale at that time. Our prices had adjusted significantly. So that travel led me literally around the world. A lot of time in South America, Europe, Eastern Europe, and Asia. I globbed on to mainland China almost immediately, given some great introductions by wealth advisors. Started my Asia desk, headed by an HSBC banker, and pretty much left it in his hands to generate the buyers to the US. We started getting a tremendous amount of interest, activity, and transactions from that Asia desk. I soon used that model and went to the Middle East, our Sotheby's owner in the Middle East, and asked him if he was interested in the cooperation of a Middle East desk in New York. He absolutely was, because there's a tremendous amount of money coming out of there into New York real estate. That proved to be quite successful. Captured then India, February 2018, and our last partnership is now our Russia desk. There are many advantages that specifically lead to sales like the $54 million one. My Asia desk delivered the buyer for that $54 million sale. The seller who I had already been working with also came from a domestic referral 4 years earlier. So this cooperative broker relationship around the world identifies people that aren't necessarily in your backyard. But there are many advantages to these desks, and it's not just referrals. What we've been able to do is use this format as a sales tool. So when my Hong Kong partner is pitching a new development or a major sale, that partner can bring me on from New York in a active video presentation to that client and representing and marketing how we might present their property to New York buyers. So there's this back and forth of we're giving each other exposure on a product as well as handing over high-level clients, confident and comfortable with the fact that they'll be giving level 1 service. It's a really extraordinary testimony to my partners' relationships with their clients and the handoff to someone that they feel confident with. We do that with Atlanta, as you well know, Jere.
Exactly. But you have built something that no one else has. I mean, you've built a true connection or true connections all over, not just the country, but the world.
Well, success proves that for me. Of our 300 million in sales in 2019, 68.7% of that was referral business, either in or out. So I would have done pretty darn well without that business, healthy enough, doing 140 million in business for the year. But the icing on the cake are these relationships. The additional advantage is in situations like this right now, COVID-19. It's a whole new corona economy. And these relationships are proving far more valuable than I had anticipated in my initial business plan. We're learning how others are dealing with this current economy, how they're exiting the crisis, and how they are adapting to their real estate market, giving me extraordinarily valuable information to project, to forecast, to manage my business forward. This valuable information will probably be the reason that we here in New York, and my team in particular, will be able to bolt out of the gate once we're finally able. And
when you've got visibility and you've got the visibility and the contact, the connectivity to investors all over the world, because I imagine right now investors want to be in New York. That's where their eye is, and you're in front of them first because of this team and this network that you've built.
I hope you're right, Jere.
I think I am. This is usually how it works out for you.
You project it. But the world economy is a complicated web of interconnections. We know that now. Those of arena understand how attractive our local real estate is to non-locals, not just domestic buyers, but also international buyers. I think the ongoing ripple effect of COVID-19 is an indicator of our new and yet to be fully understood future in real estate. There are many, many, many safe havens right now, and that's personally what we're focused on here at the field team in New York, where our New Yorkers want to move to. This is a really interesting thing that I'm sure you're seeing. Real estate goals are now upside down. I have a lot of clients who have multiple properties, large real estate portfolios, and we often help them in buying and selling and enhancing and building those portfolios. But it always has some connectivity to where they've been before, where they've vacationed before, where they have family before, where they have, the language, or they have business. There was always a first level of interest before I want to buy real estate here. Something extraordinary has happened.
Well, I think to what you said, people are reconsidering their lifestyle because it got so abruptly adjusted.
Yes.
And
they are looking at places that they have never even been to before. Here's how my clients are leading right now. Nikki, I am going to move the family. I'm looking for a safe haven. They'll use those words. I'm looking for a place that has handled the virus well, who has limited borders.
Send them to Atlanta, Nikki. Where the numbers are going down. It's crazy, and everybody's working, or not everybody, but a lot. By the time this releases, we probably will be.
Access to great health, good schools, obviously, but they have no other common connection to these areas. We're sending them around the world right now because we were able to provide on what the environment has been. That doesn't mean that people are evacuating New York. It means that they're preparing themselves for the second wave and the possibility that they may have to. On the other end of this, Jere, which is really, really exciting, is what historically, it's repeating itself. Exactly what happened in 9/11 and in the financial crisis of 2008. New York real estate was hit badly. It stopped dead, just like it did this February in 2020. And then in both instances, and now we're seeing the third, the opportunist buyers are flocking in. Opportunist buyers are the investors that know that there's an opportunity to buy low. There are distressed sellers, and they want to take advantage of it, and they're willing to go deep, go hard, and go strong in buying good product, prime product, cheap. Well, we're seeing that now. We're being besieged by opportunist buyers from around the world looking for who the vulnerable distressed sellers are in Manhattan. We're making these deals happen. That's the only thing we've been doing in the last 6 weeks. And hopefully the results will be just like they were after 9/11 in 2008. Within 1 quarter, the fuel that was established by the opportunist buyers, albeit they're buying low, we're giving the buyer users a comfort level, a perception that it was all right to come back into real estate in New York. So within a quarter or two, depending obviously on the vaccine and the health of New York, we should be seeing the user buyers coming back into the market at a more appropriate number, because they will no longer be afforded these opportunist prices, and we'll be able to see New York coming back again full swing.
Wow.
Daniel Heider in Washington, D.C.
Questions on your success, because here's what everybody wants to know. What makes you so special? In other words, what gives you your competitive edge to be, you're the highest producing agent for your age and your market, and you've got a young team. What do you think it is that makes you different?
Gosh, I think we have a number of things that make us a little bit different. I think I've always centered everything that I do around authentic relationships. And if you were to ask me what I think is so impressive about what we've done, it's that almost all of our business has been done by referral. I mean, truly, we would never pay for leads on the internet. No diss to anyone out there doing that. That's hard work. But, everything comes to us that's, organic. And, we've centered our business around real relationships and not just looking at one client as a single transaction, but as an avenue and a pathway to multiply themselves. I don't think that I've been successful if I just sold one house to one buyer or just sold a house from one seller. I want that multiplier effect. And we create that multiplier effect a lot of different ways. It's upfront investment, what we put into our listings, how we show people we care about them, our competency, the way that we approach this business through the data that we present to our clients. Washington, D.C., I think the statistics are, it's the highest educated market in the world per capita, meaning people with the most advanced degrees in any little given area. And so you really have to approach this, especially in the upper bracket market where we're doing a very hefty volume of business, from an academic standpoint. Folks are not, you're not rolling up in the Ferrari and the jeans and the t-shirts like $1 million listing. This is a pretty serious place to do business with folks, because a lot of these people are very serious A-type people. They're doctors and attorneys and consultants, and they're politicians and they're diplomats and they're ambassadors. And, there's a whole litany of pretty serious roles that I could rattle off. But, also, we want to do things for folks. We want a relationship to be well past just the settlement table. I pride myself on not just being able to be, the best real estate advisor to our clients, and also helping them figure out all of the different transitions that come along with buying or selling real estate. When you're moving into Washington, I'll give you just one example. I have a very good client. This is a perfect example of the multiplier effect. A very good client who was referred to me by my aunt's very good friend, who's like my aunt. Her name, we called her Aunt Connie growing up. And she is the executive assistant to this very high-powered attorney. Most people would say that
he wrote the book on international arbitration. His name is Jan Paulsen. He wouldn't mind if I used his name. He's a very dear friend of mine now. And when Jan moved to Washington, he was relocating his firm to DC. His wife is also in international arbitration. They have a young son. They were living in Coral Gables in Miami. And I basically laid everything out for him. Not only did I find him his home, which was off market through a relationship that I had at another firm, but all of a sudden I was telling Jan where to hold his business meetings. I was helping them pick out, proper schools for Sammy to go to. When Marika came with their son, I helped her get a job here at Albright Stonebridge through one of my young friends who used to be a speechwriter at the White House. So I pride myself on building, a huge mantle of trust with the people that give me the opportunity to do what I love to do and really what I do best,
So,
to play this advisory role.
So to put that into context for all of our listeners, I think something that's really important to hear about that is, number one, you're basically saying this is what's in my mind and how I make decisions and doing things. But I think something really interesting to talk about and pull out of what you're telling us is when you take on a client, you're not just like doing a deal. You get involved in their life and everything, because especially in DC, it's a very integrated, it's all about connections, connectivity, lots of professionals. You've got people moving in and out, very, again, A-type. So there's so much out there about when you become an agent, you get on the phone and you just call people and you just ask for referrals. There's none of that. You're
right. Well, so here's what I would say. I a lot of people, like I'm sure, reach out to you, call me and ask me for advice a lot. And I always tell them that as one component of the advice I give is to always front load your value. If you really want if you want that kind of mantle of trust and respect that I have with families like the Paulsen family, you got to be bringing so much to the table. It's not just about sending somebody, a couple of homes to look at. When I was helping them find their first place, which they ended up buying two in the same building, the two most expensive trades in the entire building. I knew every single thing about that building, and I had never had a listing there before, but I looked up the builder, I looked up the square footage, I looked up everybody in the tax records so that I could always come at it from a point of value. And so, look, I've earned the business that I have through our competency and through conveying over and over and over again that we're worth putting the type of trust into our hands, than the other guy. I've been willing to make those sacrifices and to put my all into every single client like that because, I'm always focused on that bigger picture. You asked me what my competitive advantage is. I am always focused on the deals that are 10 years from now. It's a part of my anxiety, to be honest with you too, because I feel like I live so far in the future sometimes, but for instance, he ended up buying the penthouse in that building that I just told you about after I sold him that first $3 million unit, and they bought a $4.5 million unit thereafter. Right. He's now moved back overseas. And before he moved overseas, he said to me, and he's a Swedish sort of stoic, but very warm-hearted man. He said, Danny, I'm leaving this penthouse to you. You tell me exactly what I need to do. I mean, I have sold so many people properties that they've never seen. I have handled listings from A to Z with folks out of the country. And so with that kind of trust, I'm able to really do my best work because I'm invested in that relationship. And by the way, I've gotten to know him and his family and his wife, and I've worked with his entire office. I've worked with his business partners who are some very important global people. And so not only was I able to sell one condo that was a high-end condo, I sold another one to him in the same building. And I also sort of upgraded just everything going on in his life, from Sammy's private school that he had a hard time getting into, to helping Marika get her job, to organizing his business meetings, to getting them last minute dinner reservations at hard to get into restaurants. And now, I'm flying to the Middle East, to the Kingdom of Bahrain, and working with, some of their top folks because of that one opportunity. That is the multiplier effect. And that's really what makes the biggest difference. Because look, I will tell you, and I've learned this recently, I actually, and I really mean this, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm really careful about the people that I take on now, because the hardest part of this job for me is giving away so much of myself. And I want to build something, because we work so much. I want to build something that gives back to me. And that example of the Paulson family, they've given back to me in such a major way that I've had the ability to see different parts of the world. I've met incredible people who I now have the same mantle of trust built with. And I mean, look, I like to think of real estate as the ultimate entrepreneurial sort of path. It's the super highway of relationships. And you can go as slow as you want, and you can go as fast as you want, and you can go left, and you can go right, and you can go east and south and west, and you can go anywhere you want with residential real estate, because it's the sexiest thing about this is really becoming a true advisor to someone and being important in their life. Our clients don't just refer us and say, oh yeah, I've got a real estate agent, you should maybe talk to this person. They will knock over chairs in restaurants and stop traffic with their bare hands to say, look, I know that your aunt is selling real estate and you really want to list your home with her, but you owe it to yourself to call these people. Not only did they sell my house in 3 days when it was listed previously before with another agent for 150 days and invested more money than anyone else and invested more time, but they also got my mom a Mother's Day reservation at the Four Seasons on that Sunday. Like, I don't know who these guys are, but oh my God, I just love them. You got to talk to them, and so we want to just always just deliver all day long. And I get excited about it because it's changed my whole life. Selling real estate is my life. And while it doesn't define me, because if something ever happened, if the robots take over our job, or if the economy tanks, I'm not defined by real estate. I'm defined by the way I treat other people and the way that I treat myself. And that has been the guiding principle. And that's been the biggest difference. And that's what our competitive edge is.
And Jonathan Spears on 30A in the Florida Panhandle, from Panama City to Destin.
You talk about delegating. You talk about, you can't be successful alone, but you've also talked about, not in this interview yet, your greatest weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Your strength is probably passion and authenticity and drive.
Right.
Anything else to add to your passion before we go into your weakness?
I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I think, I think I'm very passionate about people, but my weakness is I want everything to be perfect. And if I can curate every little detail of absolutely everything in my life, I would do it in a heartbeat, but there's not enough minutes, hours, and seconds during the day to do that. And so what I realized is I had to give up certain areas of control of my business. And that didn't mean, just pushing it off onto people or, just letting go of what I enjoy doing, but rather finding somebody to come alongside me that is truly better at certain things so that I can focus on what my strengths are, which is selling real estate. I may not be great at organizing the back end of a system, that like we could sit around and talk about file organization and, what most C-level personalities are amazingly good at. I'm absolutely a high D and a high I. So that's the last thing I want to spend time on is like, back end system things. And so I was able to partner with somebody early on. I think it was late 2015. My executive assistant, Sarah Mallett, who is still with me today, She is the absolute glue to my business. And what that means is I'm able to interface with customers. I am, out there, working to drive more business, but she's on the back end, literally holding me up, like full support. And so it's just so amazing when you're able to click in that type of relationship. It's critical and pivotal to being able to continue forward. Otherwise, you find yourself caught up and things slip through the cracks. And so my job was to mitigate that loss by hiring people who have strengths that aren't necessarily mine.
So it sounds like Sarah, you mentioned, or I know you've got 3 other team members who are selling, and you've got 3 people on your team in support. You've got someone who's kind of in the field doing the showings, if something needs to be delivered, if somebody needs to be out delivering things, she's doing that. Right. You've got someone overseeing, managing, growing, motivating, training.
Yep.
And then you've got Sarah, who you just called your glue. I think everybody looks for that first person is Sarah, that they want and they're looking for, or even people that are at a high level, they've got to keep out Sarah.
Yeah, Jere, it's funny you mentioned that. So like you said, the first thing that people look for, I've actually been talking to some incredible top producers who are close friends of mine in different markets. And they also have access to the Sotheby's International Realty brand and are just superstars in their own right. But they have a very similar problem that I do. It's almost a disease of having to control everything. Yeah. And I think it's because we've poured our hearts into this business, and we give our hearts to our clients. I mean, we spend more time with our customers than our family, and they become family. So, we get into these advisor roles and we don't want to get out. And so sometimes you just have to get out of your own way. First step is hire a Sarah. Number one, to grow your business, you have to have somebody that can help you from an administrative side. And that allows you to do more tasks. The craziest thing I remember when I hired Sarah, and this is natural, this is what's going to happen. You find this void of time, like that time that you were in putting properties in the MLS yourself and like uploading photos and making sure that each picture is perfect. Like now somebody else is doing that. And you're like, oh my God, what do I do with my time now? Like, I was doing this before. And what I learned is lean into that proactive side and make sure you're picking up that phone and you're talking to more people. If you were calling 10 people a day, now you're calling 20. If you're calling 20, now you're calling 40. And that's how you grow. That's how you optimize your time to serve your customers at the highest level. And so what we've done is we parlayed that from just having an incredible Sarah who, there's nobody that could replace her on our team, to having, another support staff for Sarah. I've got Katie, who not only does she go out and work in the field, but she also handles the charitable side of our business. And that's something that, we decided as a team at the Spears Group that was very important, was to give back to our community. And, I love that I've got somebody that's, dedicated to looking for those opportunities. We're always out looking for opportunities for our clients. Who do we have that's advocating on behalf of our team for the community and making sure that we remain, a staple that cares? We're out here trying to catch dollars, but are we giving back? So, that's a portion of my team dynamic. And then I've got 3 incredible agents that, work with different buyers. I don't want to call them buyers agents because they work with buyers and sellers. And, we support each other in all types of activities when we're transacting. But those guys are managed by Brian Fairweather, who recently joined our team back in January. And his job, if I think about my business, is 2 entities. It's Jonathan and what Jonathan's doing, and that's kind of the main well. And then you've got Spears Group that draws from that and not only adds to that culture, but grows alongside it. Brian's job is to, help support our agents and specifically be there for problem solving, which frees up my time to continue working specifically in my business. So it's a balancing act, but it's one that has to come together cohesively in order to grow and to really allow you to do the things that you love.
So I love how you went ahead and jumped and elaborated.
I'm sorry, I had to.
No, you're perfect. But I want to tap into, I don't know how much we said about your weakness being delegating.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was going to ask you that, but I'm just going to answer it for you? I mean, tell me if you have anything else to say or if I'm off on that or you changed your mind since we spoke earlier.
No, we literally just talked about, how to overcome your weakness, because truly my weakness is delegating. You can ask every single person on my team what drives me crazy, and it's giving up, something. And it's so tough.
So mine is too. Well, mine's the opposite. I will delegate. I'm like, I keep thinking about Kevin Brown in this interview, but Kevin delegates and then he just doesn't even talk to you anymore. He's like, oh, you got it. That's what I do. And then you've either got it or I'm micromanaging you. So how have you learned to delegate? How have you figured out when you know that they're doing it right and how to set them up for success and let them go? And when, no, this is actually the wrong person and how to get the right person?
Jere, I love what you said earlier is that, Kevin Brown will not only delegate, but once he delegates, he's got faith, right? Like that's such a great word to describe him.
Yeah,
he's got faith, and
he started as a priest, everybody, if you haven't listened yet.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Kevin believes that the person he's delegating to can knock out the task at hand and he doesn't have to micromanage. I would say I'm the same way. I don't have the time to micromanage. So if I delegate, I have to know that task isn't going to fall flat on its face. Because at the end of the day, it certainly reflects on you when something in your business doesn't go perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing I had to learn, Jere, was grace. Because we're not all going to do it perfectly. Things are going to fall through the cracks. We've got well over $100 million in listings. And let's just say we have a sign that's delivered to the wrong property. Am I going to ruin my whole day over it? Or do I trust my team to correct their mistake? I've had to learn the latter, right? I used to allow my day to get ruined because of it. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm calling the seller and apologizing profusely. But now it's no sweat off our back. If a small mistake happens, we not only correct it, but we learn from it. Yeah. And I think that's what makes us great. So I've had to learn to have high faith in those team members that I choose to surround myself with and who choose to surround me, with what they're doing, because they're also working, to sow into this business that has become a wellspring for everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf podcast.com.